The quantum system for spinning your space, time, energy, and matter of a problem. Every experience a person has, every belief they hold about the past, what they think about the now, and what they conceive of that waits for them in the future, needs to be expressed in space. Where is it or was it? Has to have a measure within time. When is it or was it? There will certainly have to be an energy to it. How is it or was it? And being an it will have to be defined by a finite form made up of matter. So what is it or was it? From a quantum linguistics perspective, these are not metaphors. They are the perceptual coordinates of reality itself. Every internal representation must exist somewhere at some time with a certain somehow creating an energetic quality and be something that gives it form that is required for its definition and meaning. The quantum system is a helpful therapeutic framework that I see as another advanced and elegant form of quantum linguistics. It allows us to play directly with the elements of reality that have been skewed, misused, and abused to create the limiting, preconceived notion that is the client's problem. What most people experience as a problem is not the event itself. It's the way the event has been represented and given tangibility through words that define the space, time, energy, and matter. A problem persists not because it is objectively true, but because it is consistently represented and experienced as if it were true. Using the quantum system, we can create a linguistically driven neurological spin around space, time, energy, and matter, easily changing the problem into something that no longer functions as a problem at all. Where, what, how, and when are you at right now? In society, we have certain social norms that most people, not all, comply with. We usually engage with others through, now I use the word engage loosely, as people nowadays seem to engage more with their mobile phones, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Yet when we do engage, we tend to begin with a surprisingly limited set of perceptual questions. To understand your reality, you have to be able to understand the tangible aspects of what you're perceiving to be reality. Not the story you're selling, not the justification you're clinging on to, not the explanation that gives you some sort of certainty about it, but the words you need to represent the coordinates through which that story has been or is being experienced and now expressed. We want to first listen effectively, and we do that through presuppositions, metamodel, drilling down into the root of the feeling and the belief. Then we want to focus in on the most relevant part of the structure. Now we can do that by perhaps asking, how are you? What are you? Where are you? And when are you? Each of these questions points attention towards a different dimension of the experience. Together, they reveal how a person is orientating themselves within their own perceived reality. We may also want to dig down into the more conceptual and expansive aspects of this reality, and we can do that by asking, who are you and why are you? At this stage, these questions tend to evoke identity, meaning, and justification. However, they also begin to expose how tightly a person has fused their sense of self within the form, location, and duration of their experience. So we must also pay attention to the power of what are you not? Now we've looked at what all that might be forming the positive aspects of all that you believe you are, but how much of that definition relies equally on all that you believe that you're not? I may be honest because I'm honest. I may also be honest more because I believe myself not to be a liar. In the same way as a cup is defined as a cup because of its shape, form, and function. But does part of what it is require it not to be anything else? When thrown across a room at someone's head, does it become a projectile that is now performing the function of a weapon? Now, this distinction is more important than it first appears. Much of a person's internal stability comes not necessarily from what they identify as, but from what they exclude, or definitely and sometimes vehemently believe they are not. Now, a little note here. If a person is triggered or emotionally tweaked and quite passionate and vocal about what they are definitely not, then there's a good chance it's a deeply suppressed aspect that is indeed them. So it's always a good idea to test this by simply asking, how are you not? What are you not? Where are you not? And when are you not? And if we want to be even more expansive, we can ask, who are you not? And why are you not? These questions reveal the boundaries of a person's internal map. And often the moment someone becomes aware of where the problem is not, the nervous system can begin to relax. You may also stimulate a new rich and vital flow of even more helpful awareness. This awareness alone can create the clarity required to stimulate change, or at the very least, trigger some sort of movement. Mapping perception to reality gives us insight into the elements that are giving meaning to a problem that a person has created and is now maintaining. When we understand how a client is organizing their experience across space, time, energy, and matter, we can begin to test and spin those dimensions safely, effectively, and elegantly out of their conscious awareness. The who, what, is identity and matter. The where is location and space. The when is temporal framing, the way they're experiencing time. And the how is the quality and intensity of the energy being stimulated. The why is the reasons, which when challenged well, will often collapse all of the above. A little note at this stage, I would avoid the why question, as problems will almost certainly already contain more than enough reasons and justification. What we're doing here is stimulating change by shifting orientation, rather than challenging content and detail directly. Testing a shift in space. We can test a shift in space simply by inviting a different spatial awareness through the language we choose within the frame of the question. Where are you that's, or where are you that's not, above or below the problem, inside or outside the problem, moving around the problem, getting over the problem, drifting further away from the problem? The problem that is right here behaves very differently to one that's over there. Distance alone can dramatically alter emotional intensity and bring back a sense of control. Now, testing a shift in time. We can test a shift in time by simply introducing a different temporal awareness. When are you that's, or when are you that's not? Before or after the problem, earlier or later than the problem, not happened yet within the problem, already past the problem, becoming now not the problem. When a problem is no longer anchored to always or now, it begins to loosen. Time can subtly influence the permission to change without the need for any kind of perceived force. Testing a shift in energy. We test energy by stimulating a different quality or intensity of the experience. How are you that's, or how are you that's not? Totally or partially not the problem, completely or just enough of the problem, less than before about the problem, more manageable within the problem, fading or settling the feelings related to the problem. Energy determines how heavy or light an experience feels. A reduction in intensity often precedes a person's awakening to a new clarity and increased choice. tasting a shift in matter. Finally, we taste matter by altering the form and/or the definition of the tangible, physical, or nominalized aspects of the problem. What are you that's? Or what are you that's not? A larger part of something that's not the problem. Something else that's definitely not the problem. No longer the same as the problem. Only one aspect of what's now not the problem. Not what it used to be now that it's not the problem. When identity and form are no longer fused, the problem can stop defining the person. Thus, it's no longer required to be projected into their experiences. When dimensions separate, problems dissolve. Most problems feel overwhelming because space, time, energy, and matter have collapsed into one another. Identity becomes fused with an experience. Time becomes permanent. Energy becomes intense. Space becomes unavoidable. The quantum system gently separates these dimensions again, making them more fluid and independent. We're disconnecting the complex equivalencies and removing their reasons. You are not the problem. This is not forever. It doesn't have to feel like this. It's not everywhere, and it's definitely not everything. And as these perceptual coordinates shift, reality reorganizes itself naturally. Not because it was forced, but because it was skillfully and linguistically reorientated. There are many therapeutic benefits of the quantum system process, and the true therapeutic power of the quantum system lies in its ability to create change without confrontation, analysis, or resistance. Rather than challenging a person's beliefs or attempting to fix the content of their experience, it works at a far deeper and more elegant level by reorganizing how that experience is being represented internally. When a person learns to recognize and shift their perception of space, time, energy, and matter, several important therapeutic benefits naturally emerge. First, the process rapidly reduces the emotional intensity. A space is expanded, time is loosened, energy is softened, and form is redefined. The nervous system no longer needs to maintain a state of threat or urgency. This creates immediate relief without requiring insight, justification, or explanation. Second, it restores a sense of agency and choice. Many problems persist because they feel close, permanent, overwhelming, and identity-defining. By separating these dimensions, the individual experiences themselves once again as someone having an experience rather than them being the experience. This alone can shift helplessness into possibility. Thirdly, the system gently decouples identity from difficulty. When matter and form are no longer fused with who I am, shame, self-judgment, the internal conflict can begin to dissolve. The person is free to change without feeling that they're betraying themselves or losing coherence or alignment with an entrenched, limiting identity. The fourth bypasses resistance by working with the unconscious mind rather than against it. The unconscious responds far more readily to changes in orientation than to logic, advice, or persuasion. Because the process feels natural and self-generated, change is often accepted rather than defended against. The fifth benefit is it creates sustainable change, not just temporary relief. Once a person learns how their internal reality is constructed, they gain a transferable skill. They are no longer dependent on the practitioner to solve problems for them. Instead, they have acquired a method for reorganizing perception whenever challenge arises. And finally, the quantum system supports integration rather than fragmentation. Rather than removing or suppressing parts of an experience, it allows them to take their appropriate place within a broader, more flexible internal landscape. This leads to greater emotional regulation, clarity, and psychological resilience. In essence, the quantum system does not solve problems. It dissolves the conditions that made them feel like problems in the first place. And when perception changes, reality can't help but be different. In our next video, we're going to be looking at skillfully moving between inductive and deductive languaging within the structure of a problem, and what happens when you effectively control the chunk level of any interaction as you choose to expand or contract at will a person's perceived reality of the problem. So if you'd like to learn even more, then please do consider liking and subscribing, because it really does help us here at the channel to continue to create and share these advanced linguistic influencing concepts, tools, and techniques as we continue to learn, evolve, and create positive change together.